All right, so welcome back to another session. Thank you so much for landing into this video. It either means you're just getting started on AWS or you're already an expert on AWS and you are looking to learn the corporate way of doing AWS. So far, we have covered AWS organization's Identity Center and how Identity Center is integrated with Azure AD. If you have not seen those videos, please go back, watch those videos. It will help you understand the sequence. Now, the next topic that we are covering in this session is AWS Control Tower. Right? Giving you a little bit of history of AWS Control Tower. Right? It is, I think, it's a product launched by AWS around 2020, around that timelines pretty much. But before that, before the Control Tower existed, um, only AWS organization was there, and it was the only way to govern your entire organization, set of accounts, multi-account setup, the corporate setup, etc. Now, what AWS Control Tower has done is it has put up a wrapper around the entire landing zone or your governance framework, right? Before Control Tower, you would use multiple APIs, you would use organizations and do a lot of automation to achieve governance, right? With Control Tower, your governance is much easier, all right? So this is the documentation officially provided by AWS. If you look at it, it states straightforward way to set up and govern an AWS multi-account environment, following the prescriptive best practices. So in a couple of minutes, you can start with a corporate AWS Control Tower, which before Control Tower, to set up that kind of governance was very difficult. You had to bring all the pieces together, automate them, make sure your guardrails are enabled. But Control Tower will make sure your landing zone is set up in a much easier way. It helps you orchestrate the capabilities of several other AWS services and primarily AWS organizations. Identity Center to build a landing zone in less than an hour. Okay. Had we not done AWS organizations previously in one of the chapters, an ideal way to start setting up your corporate accounts would have been AWS Control Tower, but that should be okay. Let's go ahead and enable the Control Tower. So I will go into the AWS account with an administrator access, and then we'll go to the Control Tower service and enable AWS Control Tower. Okay, there are two options. I want to set up full environment. I have an existing environment and want to enable AWS managed controls. So we'll select the first option. We'll go with all the convenient defaults for now. Just make sure that you are selecting the right home region. It is important because Control Tower will not allow you to change the home region. You have to decommission your Control Tower for you to be able to reset the home region. So it's important to decide what's your home region and ensure that it's a preferred region for the corporate, right? For example, if my software services or website are hosted in the East Coast, go with the North Virginia, for example, and have a discussion internally with the teams to understand what would be your home region. So for now, we'll select US East, and we'll come back to these options for additional regions for governance and the region deny control in the upcoming sessions. But for now, let's keep the defaults, turn on automatic account enrollment, and move to the next. All right. So in an ideal scenario, these two security and sandbox OUs should not be present here. So I was doing some experiments, so let me reset that right away. I will delete that and show you the settings from scratch. wanted to reset that, and then back. We'll say next and cancel. So we'll do it again, say next. Alright, I have to refresh the screen for it to really understand that these OUs do not exist anymore. Alright, so I'll set the defaults, go next. Alright, so this is what you see in a fresh account. You're using an existing organization. We created our own organization already, and these are the two OUs, right? The security OU is something that is recommended as per the AWS guidance. It's foundational, and sandbox is an optional OU that you can create. So let's keep both the OUs. Sandbox is something that we would use for testing out newer services in new accounts, so we'll keep the sandbox OU. So just go through the description here. When you choose create OUs, the selected organizational units will create within the root directory of your existing organization. You can proceed after they have been created. The important thing to understand here is the security OU here will have two accounts, which are called the security audit account and the log archive account, right? These are the two shared accounts that gets created as a part of the control tower. The benefits and the significance of these two accounts, they will act as centralized accounts for logging, centralized account for security services, and that can be used across the organization. And we'll learn more. Let's move forward and create the OUs. So when you create these OUs, you will see that in the organization console. So before we move forward, let's just clarify that. Let's go to the organization console, and you will start seeing these OUs under the main organization. These are nothing but containers of your accounts, right? Containers of your accounts, and you can segregate governance policies, security policies across these OUs. Alright, the best practice: have a security OU, have a sandbox OU, and we can continue to create more OUs as per the workloads that you want to host in the AWS account. So we'll go next. Assuming that AWS, as a part of provisioning this control tower, will put two accounts in the security OU. Let's go to the next tab. Default OU for service integration will keep security as default. We would be enabling AWS config and AWS CloudTrail. Alright, so control tower by default allows you to interface with AWS config, CloudTrail, and these are set of governance based services that are very important for the organization, right? For the control tower to be able to govern all the AWS accounts, AWS config and CloudTrail becomes trivial, right? So let's make sure that you are enabling the config and the CloudTrail, because that's one of the requirements for a mature control tower. So let's see what it says. To enable the detective controls, the AWS config service integration must be enabled with control tower. You can choose to perform this one-time enablement now or after you set up the control tower. So let's keep the default for now, and let's enable the config. And as similarly, we will also enable the AWS CloudTrail. Okay. As a part of this initial setup, AWS expects you to have an aggregator account and a CloudTrail administrator account. Unfortunately, you cannot use the same account as the CloudTrail administrator. For example, if you just key in this number, it states that the selected account is not in the default OU for service integration, right? So let me go back here. So here, when you click on next, you have selected that the default OU should be the security OU, right? That means you have to make sure that your administrators for these security services must be under the security OU, right? Alright, let's see what else it will allow you to choose. So you can allow it to use sandbox or security. So it allows you to confirm a new OU as well. So let's go back, create a new account, okay, and give it a name called as aggregator account. And we will use the main email, and we'll use the plus address. All right, so we'll use corporate AWS landing zone plus. Since we're naming it aggregator, actually we'll name it config aggregator, all small caps. All right, so we have to make sure that every account you create has a unique email ID. Instead of me going and creating a new email box, I can always use a plus address, and as long as your email provider allows that, right? So even if I use corporate AWS landing zone plus config aggregator, that means the email goes to corporate AWS landing zone at gmail.com. So it is just another alias for your email. So let's just create that. All right, so it just created an AWS account in the backend, which means you just select that here, account ending with 365, and move forward. Similarly, you need a CloudTrail administrator. All right, so we'll just say CloudTrail admin, and we have to make sure that we are using a unique ID here. So similar to config aggregator, we'll name it Cloud Trail admin and say create. All right, there's your account created successfully, ends with 323, and it's pre-filled for you. All right, you could also end up having the same account, right? But I just, from a convenience standpoint, went ahead and had two different accounts, one specifically that manages your AWS config aggregator, and the other one is for the CloudTrail. All right, select an identity center account access, select how to manage access to your AWS account registered with Control Tower. You can change this later. So since we already set up an identity center, we will go with the self-managed AWS account access with identity center, and for now we will not enable backups. All right, so let's just review it. We have selected the full environment. Our home region is US East North Virginia. We have created two organizational unit, security and sandbox, under the organization ID which is mentioned right here. We are ensuring that all the default service integrations would have to be from the selected OU, which is security. We have enabled AWS config, AWS CloudTrail, and ensured that each of these services have their respective accounts where we can manage these services from. We are ensuring that the control tower is not creating an identity center, because we are self-managing that at this point of time. All right, so let's enable this. It might take 30 to 35 minutes for this to set up, so let's keep tracking the status. So right now it is setting up your landing zone. Estimated time remaining is 35 minutes. So at this point of time, you can safely close this browser. All right, this is an error from my previous experiment, so you can ignore that safely. All right, so if I want to just show you an detailed view of the status, click on show status. All right, okay, so let me change the view here. Bottom view, confirm. Okay, so these are multiple stages of a landing zone provisioning, right? It starts with creating or enrolling the shared accounts for audit and logging in security OU. So these are the two accounts that are supposed to be provisioned. It will set up your identity and access management configuration. In our case, it has to just skip it. It has to configure the audit account, configure the log archive account, configure account factory to provision the control tower member accounts. It has to enable all the mandatory controls of your organization units and update the security OU with AWS region configuration. So it will take around 30 to 35 minutes. So I will show you once it's done. But while this is happening, let's peek into AWS organizations and see if what changes happened in there. So if you see, there is CloudTrail admin and config aggregator. These are the two accounts that we created as a part of the control tower setup. Okay. And once the control tower is provisioned end to end, we should be able to see two more accounts, which would be the shared accounts that we would get as a part of the control tower setup. All right, so it just created and enrolled the shared accounts for audit and logging. That's good news. Let's see if it is showing up here. Not yet, so we'll wait and we'll come back. All right, so let's look at the status of the control tower, and it is now enabled successfully. All the steps required for control tower enablement is now complete. We'll just close all of these pop-ups. I just want to give you a little bit of insights into what I have read on the latest features that have been launched as a part of Landing Zone 4.0 and remove any misunderstandings that might have created during the initial discussions of the control tower that I've mentioned in this video. So let me first of all take you to the security OU. AWS Landing Zone 4.0 version has now mandated that there will no more be organizational structure restriction, which I was kind of explaining in my previous parts of the video here. So the security OU that you see here are populated with two accounts that we have already created as a part of control tower enablement, which is the CloudTrail admin and config aggregator. So these are service specific integrations that we have enabled, and Landing Zone 4.0 only mandates you to make sure that all of your service enabled delegated admin accounts or supporting accounts, you could talk about service specific integration accounts, needs to be in a single OU. In our case, if you go back to control tower, for example, let's take the landing zone settings. Under the service integrations, you will find that AWS config is enabled and the aggregator account is this. We have CloudTrail centralized logging, and you will find that there is also a CloudTrail admin account. So in general, before Landing Zone 4.0, there used to be two types of accounts which were standard. You know, AWS would name them log archive account and audit account specifically. Now there is no restrictions such like that, and the corporates are allowed to customize or engage their existing organizations in play while they enable the control tower. So that is a nuance I wanted to explain as I progress through this video. So I read through and I think it's a good read. If you go through the release notes under the control tower documentation and check for Jan 2025 to December 2025, and the latest was 4.0 version, right? So if you look at the key changes, there are optional service integrations. So Landing Zone 4.0 lets you choose which service integrations to enable in your environment, like we saw with AWS config and AWS CloudTrail. Disabling an integration will clean up the control tower deployed resources specific to that integration. All right. So it's very important to note that we have a flexible organization structure. So you're no longer required to use a security OU. You can define your own organization structure. The only requirement, like I said, is that all the hub accounts must be in the same OU. All right. Okay, so we will deep dive much more technically into this, but for now, let's consider that our control tower is enabled. We have a CloudTrail admin, a config aggregator, which looks after config, and CloudTrail admin looks after the CloudTrail. So let's look at some of the resources that have been deployed, right? And if you look at, for example, the Control Tower dashboard, um, and the account factory, so this is the account factory that we will use moving forward to create more accounts. And if you look at the organization, this is the organization structure. The same view that you see from the organization service, you are able to see here. Just that it gives you the control status, the control tower baseline status, the config baseline status, and so on, right? It is an enhanced view with governance enabled monitoring, or the governance enabled visibility that you can see from your control tower. Now, control tower is the single place of, I would say, single dashboard where you can actually visualize your governance enabled. All right. So let's go to Identity Center real quick and look at our settings. Since we have two new accounts called CloudTrail Admin and Config Aggregator, let's get ourselves the access to those. Right now we only have access to the single management account, Uncorporate AWS. We will now go to CloudTrail Admin, all right, and Config Aggregator, and set as access for both. All right, so I'll just go assign users. I'll select my user here and say I need the admin access, say next and submit. All right. Similarly, I will select my config aggregator account, not from here, sorry. Yeah, config aggregator account is actually provisioned with the access, so I was actually on it. Going back to CloudTrail, assign users, corporate landing zone, next, administrator access, next, submit. All right, so I'll close my identity center now and go back to my SSO access portal. Now I have access to CloudTrail admin. So let me take show you actually the CloudTrail admin. So now I'm logging into the CloudTrail admin account. What I would do is make sure I switch to the right region, and I want to check what is the status of CloudTrail, whether we have a CloudTrail configured or not. So we'll open the CloudTrail service, and this is the most important service, and you cannot live without a CloudTrail in a corporate landing zone setup. This is absolutely necessary to track all your API calls happening across the organization. So if you look at the trails here, a trail is automatically created when we enabled CloudTrail, right? CloudTrail name is AWS Control Tower Baseline CloudTrail, and this is a multi-region trail. Another thing to note here is it is an organization trail, which means under this organization, any member account that we would create moving forward for our workloads will have CloudTrail enabled automatically. All right. Let's just check, switch into the config aggregator account and see if CloudTrail is enabled there as well or not. So I'm logging into the config aggregator account, and first of all I'll check CloudTrail. All right, make sure that I'm switching to the right region. All right, so my base CloudTrail should also be visible here. Same name. All right, multi-region trail, yes. Organization trail, yes. If you open this, so you can find all the general details here. Okay. All right. So every trail, it has also a trail log location, right? Your log location in this case is account that ends with 323, which is the CloudTrail account. All the logs are centralized in there. So let me switch my gears back into CloudTrail admin account again and show you the logs. So we will navigate now to the S3 bucket, and also I'll open the CloudTrail console once more and go to the CloudTrail, find out the log location. All right, We do also have CloudWatch logs, and also there is logs saved under an S3 bucket. The bucket name is Control Tower CloudTrail logs, and the account number hyphen some random string. All right, this is the structure. Okay, so if certain organization has requirements to make sure this data is sent back to a SIEM system like CrowdStrike or Azure Logs, you can just send these logs from the S3 using various plugins, right? So under the organization, you will find there is an AWS Logs folder. Under the AWS Logs folder, you'll find, okay, there is another member account called 186. So you go there and figure out your cloud trails, right? Okay, so we will dig deep more later into individual sections when we'll get there. So let me go and show you the logs in CloudWatch as well. So let's look at the CloudWatch. Like I said, this is all centralized logging from all of your member accounts. Let's go to logs, log management. Just want to make sure that I am in the right region. Yeah, I think this is supposed to show up. North Virginia. All right, I don't see it yet. I'm not sure why. We'll investigate that soon. CloudTrail admin. The trail was created by the management account for your organization. You cannot edit or delete this trail unless you are logged in with that account. So let's log in back to the management account. And let's check what is the problem with our CloudWatch logs. In general, CloudWatch logs is much more easier to search, traverse through when you are troubleshooting certain issues. So I would like to go and see what's happening with the CloudWatch logs. So let's go to CloudTrail from the management account. This is where actually all the settings are configured for the organizational trail. So let's go to the trails. There you go. So that's the root cause. So you are supposed to check the CloudWatch logs in the management account. So by design, you can only find this log group in the main account. And some might debate, okay, why is that the case? It should be in the admin account. Well, I understand the frustration. So let's check CloudWatch once again, and this is the management account. Okay, I am not in the CloudTrail admin account. So let's check that. Log management. So we want to also make sure that it exists, and also there are some streams already in. So when I check the latest logs, it's all going to be JSON, time-stamped, and you'll be able to find out the event names, right? So whatever logging is happening across the member accounts, you would be able to see that in the CloudTrail, and this is exactly where you come, right? All right, so we just confirmed that the CloudTrail is active and is active with an organizational trail. The organizational trail is active from the management account, and the log groups exist in the management account. The logs for all the CloudTrail, they exist also in the S3 buckets. Now we'll go to the config aggregator account and let's validate the resources created in that. Just close all my tabs, and now we will go to config. Alright, config aggregator is nothing but a concept that allows you to aggregate all of your config findings in a single account. So if you go to aggregators here, this is what an aggregator looks like, right? Now, if you are new to AWS, you might have to go back and learn what is AWS config, but if you are already an expert working in an AWS team, you would know that aggregator would show you an aggregated resource counts across the organization. So right now, if you look at this, it's doing a resource inventory for you, right? So I can totally see, okay, these are the number of resources in each of my accounts. These are the type of resources, it helps in troubleshooting, it helps in cost optimization, it helps you to understand the current posture of your entire landing zone, right? You could also have, view of, your compliance dashboard, for example, right? Okay, and then you can go and check your rules through the aggregators, conformance packs, inventory dashboard. All right, and then you can also run some advanced queries. This becomes important for activities like discovery, right? When you're going through an assessment phase, you want to assess and run some queries. Like you want a security audit, you want to run some queries and check, okay, what are my EC2 instances doing, or if my EC2 instances are tagged with a public IP address, or are my EC2 instances accurately tagged. This is where I would come and check config, because config recorders, when deployed in member accounts, has a tendency to capture all the properties of that particular resource type, and the aggregator is the place where all of that information is aggregated. And if I'm not wrong, all of this are also archived in form of logs under an S3 bucket. So you should be able to see that under AWS Control Tower, config access logs, and control config logs. So as a best practice for this bucket where we are storing the config logs, whoever is accessing this bucket is also getting logged in the access logs for this bucket, right? So again, we will not go in depth in this particular video, but let's look at the structure of this config logs. All right, similar kind of structure like CloudTrail. When you get in, you can actually see config details based on timestamp, equally indexed, and that's your config snapshot. So if you kind of download this and get into the nitty-gritty of this file, you would be able to understand each and every resource much more in detail, which means your you can have the config data ingested into your processing systems, SIEM systems, and be able to audit your environments, right? So config and CloudTrail becomes your fundamental services in terms of security when you enable Control Tower. All right, so let's wrap up the lesson real quick. Control Tower, again, like traditional Control Tower versions, we are not required to stick with log archive account and audit account. For those of you who have been running Control Tower from 2020, 2019, that's a new lesson for all of you as well, and for myself as well. Um, Other than that, the log archive account could be any other account of your choice. You could rename them. What we have created as a part of this video is a CloudTrail admin account, which is a designated administrator for the CloudTrail, and at the same time um, a config aggregator where you are actually storing your aggregator. All right, so that's pretty much it for the Control Tower. I would all want you to go through the AWS Control Tower documentation and understand it much more in depth. But I hope this video actually gives you some perspective of how a Control Tower acts as a wrapper on your organization and your set of AWS multi accounts. Thank you so much for listening in. Happy to receive all of your questions on the comments, and see you in the next video.